கனைத்திளம் கற்றருமை கன்று கிறங்கி கனைத்திளம் கற்றருமை கன்று கிறங்கி நினைத்து முலை வழியே நின்று பால் சோர நினைத்து முலை வழியே நின்று பால் சோர நனைத்தில்லம் சேராக்கும் நற்செல்வன் தங்காய் நனைத்தில்லம் சேராக்கும் நற்செல்வன் தங்காய் பனித்தலை வீழனில் வாசற்கடை பற்றி சினத்தினா தென்கிலங்கை கோமானி சேற்ற மனத்து கினியானை பாடவும் நீ வாய்த்திரவாய் மனத்து கினியானை பாடவும் நீ வாய்த்திரவாய் இனித்தான் எழுந்திராய் ஈதன பேருறக்கம் இனித்தான் எழுந்திராய் ஈதன பேருறக்கம் அனைத்தில்லத்தாரும் அறிந்தேலோரும் பாவாய் அனைத்தில்லத்தாரும் அறிந்தேலோரும் பாவாய்.
Good morning. For more than 15 years, V. Sriram has made the last Sunday of the year memorable for Chennaiites. He has paid splendid homage to great music maestros of yesteryear at Tax Center. Like the Pied Piper of Hamelin, he has drawn crowds away from music sabhas to Tax Center. Today, you'll hear Sriram deliver the second annual virtual December lecture. Topic, Culinary Carnatic, Two Journeys Together. Everyone agrees that music exalts, inspires, soothes and stimulates. But many claim that food does the same. The best people are those who love to eat, said Julia Child. The most sincere love is the love for food, said George Bernard Shaw. The secret of success in life is to eat what you like, said Mark Twain. And life is a great combination of magic and pasta, said Federico Fellini, the great Italian film director. Ancient composers of Carnatic music have not lagged behind in singing about the virtues and glories of food. V. Sriram will tell us about them today and present some great music about great food. In recent years, leading sabhas of Chennai seem to offer a music festival in their auditoriums and a food festival in canteens outside the auditoriums. The canteens are patronized by the entire city, not by music lovers alone. What's on offer is a veritable cornucopia. It's almost Kalyana Sapada during lunchtime and a Virinda Sapada of sweets, snacks and savories during breakfast and dinner. Sriram will give us some lip-smacking details, plus perhaps a thing or two about canteen management during Marhari. Talking about his own food tastes, Sriram says he likes all Indian food from the north, south, east, and west. But he has always been a disciplined eater. He says, I have cut down drastically on fried food over the years because it agrees with only one end of the body, to borrow an expression from S.Y. Krishnaswamy, former IAS officer. Sriram used to be a coffee aficionado, but this beverage is now only an occasional indulgence. His favorite eateries on Chennai are the Madras Club, Amethyst, and Kapiladasa, but he doesn't eat out very much. About V. Sriram himself, he is a Chennai icon in several areas and arenas, including Carnatic music, Chennai history, and heritage. He is a prolific writer and the author of more than 20 books. Some of them deal, of course, with music and heritage and the environment, but several deal with corporate India. He is busy with a book on Madras, and that'll be a sensation when it is out. He is a secretary of the Music Academy, the editor of Madras Musings, and a pioneer in heritage walks and tours. He is a key driver of the annual Madras Week celebrations, which have strengthened knowledge of Madras and pride in Madras. Friends, this morning we present a cocktail of music, food, and Sriram. Let me repeat, a cocktail of music, food, and Sriram. It'll be a heady brew. Get ready to be intoxicated. Over to V. Sriram.
Thank you, Mr. Madhu, for that introduction. Thank you, Mr. Chari, for having organized this event. Mr. Chari, when he spoke to me, said that he would like the year to end on a happy and cheerful note. And I don't think there can be anybody who has been through 2020 who will disagree with that statement. All of us wholeheartedly need some cheer at the end of the year and something to look forward to in 2021. I have been working on this topic for quite a few years, and as always, finally it transpires that Tag Center is the forum where I eventually get to present it for the first time. The interest of mine in Carnatic music and food really began with the canteens, and then it developed into an interest in the lyrics in Carnatic music where food is mentioned. And finally, I found that I was journeying backwards till I finally came to Adi Sankara himself. Sankara, as we all know, was not a Carnatic composer. He was much beyond all that, but Sankara definitely lent several of his works to Carnatic music as Virittam and as verses. We have all heard Bala Saraswati sing Subramanya Bhujangam. Artists have sung the Saundarya Lahari. So eventually I think Sankara also does bestow his light on the world of Carnatic music. So I will begin with Sankara today and with a stotram which is Mrityunjaya Manasika Puja Stotram, which deals with the worship of Lord Shiva as Mrityunjaya, the conqueror of death. I think a very apt topic in this particular year of COVID. And it is a beautiful collection of verses where right from the invoking of Sankara, giving him a seat, ceremonially bathing him, offering him garments, jewelry, cosmetics, an umbrella, a fan, it proceeds stage by stage by stage. Finally, at the end of offering him all this, the food offerings begin. I first read this set of verses maybe 15 years ago, and I was amazed at the amount of variety that Sankara brings into this stotram and just the offering of food to Lord Shiva. When we go to a temple, we normally see Nevedyam is brought in. It's a very perfunctory ritual. They will draw the curtain, then they will just place it there, they'll ring the bell, and then the food will go away, leaving a whole lot of tantalizing smells to all of us. And then we will all be looking forward to what is going to come as prasadam from the Madapalli. But in Shankara, he dwells with the great love that only a foodie could have brought into this description. And let me take you through the verses. Just the verses that he describes the food offerings of. So he begins as Rajannam Madhuranvitam cha mridulam manikya patre sthitam Hingu jiraka sanmarichi malitehi shakaihi anekaihi shubhaihi sakam samyak apupa supa sahitam sadyo gritena aplutam. That is the end of the first verse. I'm leaving out the sentences that actually deal with the offering. So he says, rice fit for kings, white, pleasing and soft, bathed in ghee, vegetables seasoned with asafoetida, cumin seeds and pepper, greens, pancakes and fritters. So, apupa supa. This apupam is appam and supam, and then he offers several other things. Next, he goes on to the vegetables. Kushmanda vartaka patolikanam phalani ramyani cha karavalya supaka yuktani sa saurabhani. So, curries made with pumpkins, aubergines, snake gourd and bitter gourds, cooked well with salt and fruit. And then he talks about Sharkara militam snigdham dugdhannam gogritanvitam kadali phala sammishram. So he's almost modern in his tastes. He's talking about rice mixed with cow's milk and ghee and then with diced bananas. See the amount of detail that he is bringing into this offering. Then he talks about Ela mirichi militam. He then payasannam. He's offering paramannam. And then comes this entire section where he's only offering juices. Rambha, which is banana, Chuta, mango, Kapitta, wood apple, Kantaka, jackfruit, Draksha, Kharjurehi, which is dates, Ikshukhanda Shakalehi, that is sugarcane which has been cut and then mixed, with Narikela Ambuvihi, that is he is bringing in coconut water. And if all this is not enough, Karpura Suvasitena Gudajalehi, he is offering jaggery mixed with camphor and made into a fluid, and that is also being pushed into this juice. Must have been quite a heady mix at the end of the day that is being offered to Lord Shiva. Now, that is not the end of it. Karpura suvasitena gudajalaihi madhurya yuktaihi vibho. And then he is talking about banana stems being offered. Manogya Ramban Navakhanda Khanditan Ruchira Pradhan Sarshapa Jirakanscha Sa Saurabhan Saindava Sevitanscha Grihana Mrityunjaya Lokavandya. So he takes a banana stem and then he cuts it into small pieces, mixes it with mustard and cumin seeds and flavors it with salt. I don't know whether he fries it in oil because he doesn't mention that. And after that come an entire series of other dishes. He doesn't get over with all this, but my favorite is the curd rice. He places it in a golden vessel and he has shuk in it, and then he also has Ela Shunti Sahitam Dadhyannam Charuhema Patrastam Amrita Pratinidhi Madhyam. This is Amrita and it is of the highest quality. That is what he is offering. We will all agree that good old curd rice, there can be nothing better than that. We've got pickles. Finally, we've got salted buttermilk. Jambira Niranchita Shringaberam Manoharan Amlashalatu Kandan Mridupadam Shan Sahashopa Bungshva Mrityunjaya Sri Karuna Samudra. This is pickle. Nagara Ramatha Yuktam Sulalita Jambira Neera Sampurnam Matitham Saindava Sahitam Pibahara Mrityunjaya Kratudvam Sin. O one who destroyed the sacrifice of Daksha, come and have this buttermilk that I have prepared for you with salt, pepper and lime juice. This is Shankara so many centuries ago. We then come to Andal, the great Andal who has left behind Nachiyar Tirumuri and Tirupavai for us to delight in after so many years. And today, Tirupavai is very much, and a part of Nachiyar Tirumuri as well, is very much a part of Carnatic music repertoire thanks to Ariyakudi Ramanujayengar. And in Kudare Vellum, she talks about how they decorate themselves after having conducted the worship of Lord Krishna. And then, Adan Pinne, Parshoru Muda Nei Peidu, Murangai Varivara Kudi Irindu Kulirindu Yelo Rembavai. We then feast on Pongal. Chakra Pongal is what she is describing over here. She says, we mix rice with milk, we entirely cover it with ghee. What a combination. And then when we have it, the ghee drips down right up to our elbows. Even that detail has been mentioned by Andal in her verse in the Tirupavai. We then come to Jnanasambandha, who must have been probably a little after Andal herself as far as time is concerned. And then he comes to Mailai, where he has to resurrect Angam Poompavai. And at that time he composes a decade, a set of 10 verses on the Kapalishwarar temple, and each verse describes a particular festival in this particular temple. What is amazing is that even today, these festivals are being celebrated in this shrine. Even though the shrine has relocated, it is not at the place where Jnanasambandha actually came and worshipped, it has moved, but the worship still continues. And when he comes to the month of Thai, he says, Maipoochu Onkan Madanallar Mamayilai, Kaipoochu Nitran Kapalicharam Amarndan, Neipoochu Unburakkal Neridayar Kondadum, Thaipoosham Kanade Podio Poompavai. In the month of Thai, when that pongal is just dripping with ghee, Neipoosh, it is bathed with ghee. That pongal you are missing. You are missing Kapali seated here where he is distributing the sacred ash to everybody who comes over here. And you are also missing all those beautiful women who have come to celebrate Thaipoosham in this particular temple. So he describes the month of Thai. Thai is always associated with Pongal. And see the way he combines the two and brings across this beautiful set of verses for us. We then take a big jump and we come from the 8th and the 9th century. Now we come to the 15th century when Annamaya was living in Tirupati. Now, the temple of Tirumala is always been subjected to a lot of controversy. The worshippers of Devi say that it is a Devi idol. The worshippers of Shiva say it is Shiva. The worshippers of Kartikeya say it's a Murugan idol. The worshippers of Vishnu say it's a Vishnu idol. So Annamaya, even in his time, it appears that there was this controversy. And he has recorded that controversy in a particular song, Yenta matramuna evvari talachina anta matrame neevu. Antarantaramuna lenchi chuda pindante nippati annetlu. I'll tell you what the meaning is after we hear M.S. Subbulakshmi sing one line from this song.
Yenta matramuna evvaru talachina anta matrame neevu. Yenta matramuna evvaru talachina anta matrame neevu. Antarantaramulunchi chuda pindante nippati annattu. Antarantaramulunchi chuda pindante nippati annattu.
The verse says, Yenta matramuna evvari talachina anta matrame neevu. In whatever form people wanted to see you and in whatever measure they worshipped you, you became that. And antarantaramuna lenchi chuda pindante nippati annetlu. When they worshipped you, in whatever measure they did, you became that, just as the quality of the nippati. The nippati is a fried item, a fritter, which is made in the Karnataka, Andhra region. Just as the quality of the nippati depends upon the amount of batter that has been put in. Pindante nippati annatlu. So he knew that the quality of the dish ultimately depends upon what is being put into the dish. So he describes the Lord in that particular form. By the way, that is just not the one song of Annamaya where there are food items. There are lots of other references. I am told that there is even a reference to the idli, but I have not come across that particular song, so I have not presented it over here. But if we want a proper recipe to be given to us, we have to turn to Purandaradasa. He started making the payasam from first principles, right from the collection of the wheat and the grinding of it. Every step has been described in the song Ramanama Payasake. Let's listen to it.
राम पायस के कृष्ण नाम सकरे राम नाम पायस के कृष्ण नाम सकरे ವಿಠಲನಾಮ ತುಪ್ಪವ ಕಲಸಿಬಾಯಿ ಚಪ್ಪರಿಸಿರೋ ರಾಮನಾಮ ಪಾಯಸಕ್ಕೆ ಕೃಷ್ಣ ನಾಮ ಸಕ್ಕರೆ ವಿಠಲನಾಮ ತುಪ್ಪವ ಕಲಸಿಬಾಯಿ ಚಪ್ಪರಿಸಿರೋ ಒಮ್ಮನ ಗೋಧಿಯ ತಂದು ವೈರಾಗ್ಯ ಕಲ್ಲಾಲಿ ಬೀಸಿ ಒಮ್ಮನ ಗೋಧಿಯ ತಂದು ವೈರಾಗ್ಯ ಕಲ್ಲಾಲಿ ಬೀಸಿ ಸುಮ್ಮನ ಸೊಜ್ಜಿಗೆಯ ತೆಗೆದು ಸುಮ್ಮನ ಸೊಜ್ಜಿಗೆಯ ತೆಗೆದು ಸಣ್ಣ ಶಾವಿಗೆಯ ಹೊಸೆದು ರಾಮನಾಮ ಪಾಯಸಕ್ಕೆ ಕೃಷ್ಣ ನಾಮ ಸಕ್ಕರೆ ಆನಂದ ಆನಂದವೆಂಬೋ ಟೇಗೂ ಬಂದಾಗ ಎರಡು ಆನಂದ ಆನಂದವೆಂಬೋ ಟೇಗೂ ಬಂದಾಗ ಎರಡು ಆನಂದ ಮೂರುತಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಪುರಂದರ ವಿಠಲನ ನೆನೆಯಿರೋ ಆನಂದ ಮೂರುತಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಪುರಂದರ ವಿಠಲನ ನೆನೆಯಿರೋ ರಾಮನಾಮ ಪಾಯಸಕ್ಕೆ ಕೃಷ್ಣ ನಾಮ ಸಕ್ಕರೆ ವಿಠಲನಾಮ ತುಪ್ಪವ ಕಲಸಿಬಾಯಿ ಚಪ್ಪರಿಸಿರೋ.
That was Ashwath Narayanan, who specially recorded this song for this particular talk of mine. I'm very thankful to him for having done that. The song as it is sung today does not have all the verses, but there are a couple of more verses in the middle whose meaning I have put over here. But what is very interesting is having started with the wheat of concentration and then grinding it on the stone of determination, adding the cream of good thought and sieving it into thin vermicelli, with the heart as the wok, boiling the green gram of thought, cook well the broth of devotion and serve on a plate. And as you eat, let out the burps of joy. So that is what he says over here. Ananda Ananda Vembo Dehu Bandaga Eredu. Rendu epam udungo அப்படிங்கிறார் அவர். Not only did he start with the first principles, he goes right up to the point of digesting the dish as well. Like Shankara and Mrityunjaya Manasika Puja Stotram, Purandaradasa has an entire feast laid out for Lord Krishna in 3 songs, where he talks about the various food items that he is offering to the Lord. And finally, there is a 4th song, Tambulava Kollo, which describes the act of handing out the tambulam to Lord Krishna. And it is not just a simple question of taking on Vetalapaka, putting 2 stony pieces of beetle in it and then offering to the Lord as we all do in puja. But here he makes it a fine art where he is mixing grounded pearls, crushed rubies, all kinds of spices. And he doesn't hand it over finally. He says, Rukmini will now hand it over to you, Lord Krishna. So that is the amount of beauty and drama that Purandaradasa brings into the act of offering food to the Lord. The illustrious contemporary of Purandaradasa was Krishnadeva Raya, the ruler of Vijayanagar. Krishnadeva was not just a powerful ruler. In fact, he was what we would call as a Renaissance man. He was a well-rounded personality. There was not an aspect of life in which King Krishnadeva was not interested. He was a fitness fanatic. He was an empire builder. He was a very skillful lover, acquiring several women into his harem. And he was also a great composer. A Kannada king conquers Andhra territory, and one night when he is in Srikakulam in Andhra, he is sleeping when Lord Vishnu arrives in his dream and tells him, you have to write a work. And he asks the Lord, what is it that you want me to write about? He says, write about our Godha, the Chudi Kodutha Nachiyar of Srivilliputtur, who offered me a garland and became one with me. And therefore, a Kannada-speaking king takes a Tamil saint, Andal, as his subject and writes a Telugu work, Amukta Malyada. It is the first great kavya in Telugu. It's a Mahakavya, as it is referred to in Telugu. And it describes the entire journey of Andal from the time she is found by Vishnu Chitta. It actually begins even earlier. It starts from the time that Vishnu Chitta goes to the court of the Pandya king and extols the greatness of Vishnu. It starts from there. And it finally comes to the point where Andal becomes one with the Lord. Now, I have read this particular book. I am not well versed in Telugu, so I have read the English translation by Srinivas Sistla. It is one of the finest translations possible. And recently, I was sent a Tamil translation of this book that is with the Rajus of Rajapalayam. One of them sent me this, Mr. Dharmaraja, he sent me this particular translation. And one thing I can tell you, you can never read this work without feeling hungry all the time. Krishna Deva keeps bringing food back into the topic. He describes Vishnu Chitta's journey to Madurai and says, what are all the food items that Vishnu Chitta's wife gives him to take with him on the journey? Then he talks about Vishnu Chitta entertaining guests in his house in all the seasons of the year. And you can see over here, he talks about how during the rainy season, Vishnu Chitta took care that his wife's eyes were not hurt by smoke and ensured the cooking was with coconut fiber, because he devotes an entire section before this to the difficulties that ladies face while cooking in the rainy season in his time. What an observant man he must have been. He says that the husband is lying in bed only hoping that the wife will soon join him there. He has no other responsibility. The wife, on the other hand, is worried about the fact that she's got to cook the food in this pouring rain. And so she not only takes fronds of coconut fiber from the roof, she's also putting old clothes into the fire so that they'll burn, because it's all smoky at that time in the rainy season. The Verakadipu is not getting lit all that easily. So he makes Vishnu Chitta a very sensitive man. He says Vishnu Chitta took care that his wife's eyes were not hurt by smoke and ensured that the cooking was with coconut fiber and preparation stirred with coconut shell ladles. He served the guests with red rice, peeled and cooked lentils, several vegetables, a flood of ghee. By the way, everybody writes about a flood of ghee. I think they had no problems with cholesterol and such things in their lifetime. Fritters and curd. Then in summer, he would offer sandal paste, mildly hot rice, rasam, more kurambu, smooth gruel, sugarcane juice, coconut water, sweet dishes, pickles, buttermilk, water made fragrant with vetiver. In winter, it would be the perfume of the civet cat. Hot rice with pepper powder, vegetables just off the pan, pachadi with medicinal powders to clear blocked sinuses, payasa, pickle, ghee freshly melted, and milk thickened by boiling. In my translation, I have mentioned how the vegetable was freshly off the pan. He talks about chatti shuyyanu nadarani kura kumbu. When the pot is taken off the fire and placed on the cold floor, shuyyanu satham varudhan adilende. So shuyyanu nadarani. So he talks, even that he has described. The king has described even that little detail in his work in Amukta Malyada. You should read the translation. You will just love this particular work. Around 100 years after, actually 150 years after King Krishnadeva, the Marathas become the rulers of the Tanjavur region. King Shahaji, one of the early rulers of the Tanjavur Maratha Empire, was a prolific composer. We find that many of the later composers in Carnatic music have actually followed the model that Shahaji has given us in terms of compositions. His greatest known work of King Shahaji is Pallaki Seva Prabandha. The Pallaki Seva Prabandha is the story of Kamalamba in Tiruvarur pining for union with Tyagesha. Even today, as you know, the Kamalamba shrine is a separate shrine from the Tyagesha shrine, and the Bhoga Patni, or the consort of Tyagesha in the temple, is Nilotpalamba. Kamalamba is still performing penance, hoping for the day when she will unite with Tyagesha. So, Pallaki Seva Prabandha is about Kamalamba waiting for reunion with the Lord, and her Sakhis taking a message to Lord Tyagesha and telling him, please come and meet with Kamalamba and be with her. So they then bring him in a palanquin. The burden of the opera is actually the bringing of Shiva in a palanquin. Having brought him to Kamalamba's chamber, he is then offered several things, in which there is an entire song, Aragimpavaya, which is about all the food items that went to be offered to him. So let's listen to Archana and Aarti sing this song for us, once again specially recorded for this particular session.
Aragimpavaya, brokevaya, Aragimpavaya, Maya, Aragimpavaya, Kurimi Gauri to konda viti jangamaya, Aragimpavaya, Kurimi Gauri to konda viti jangamaya, Aragimpavaya, Maya, Aragimpavaya, Tiruvisamulu pongallu, Timmanamulu varugulu, Neti burelu merugu doseliddenalunu, Aragimpavaya, Puragayalu kuralu, Olu chupa pulunu, Sara bhalamulu, Kanda chakkeralu keralu, Aragimpavaya, కలవంట కములు పాయసము, కలమానములు పరమానములనవలు, పంచదారలు తేనెలు, Aragimpavaya, పొలుపైన దధ్యోదనము, పులిహోరలును, మెలగు మీగడ పెరుగు, మేలిన శుంఠి మజ్జిగ, Aragimpavaya, కమనీయ పరిమళయుత గంగా జలము, గమగమని వాసించు కర్పూరంపు విడ్డెములు, Aragimpavaya, మ్రోకేమయ్యా, Aragimpavaya, Maya, Aragimpavaya.
Thiruvisamulu, Pongallu, sherbets, and then Pongal, Timmanamulanu, Varagulu is Vadam, Nedi Purelu, puris fried in ghee, Merugu dose, the dosa that has been fried to a crisp, and Iddelu, idlis. And then Urugayalu, Kuralu, Onusu, Pappulu. Urugayalu, of course, is pickles. Then you've got vegetables, Pappulanu, various kinds of lentils, Palamunu, then Kanda Chakkare, so he has crystallized sugar sweets, then Payasamanu, Paramannamulu, that is another variety of payasam. Then you've got Dadhyodanamu, and here what is very interesting is their description, Raja Shahaji's description of buttermilk is identical to Shankara's description in the 8th century. It's the same description in Telugu, the same dried ginger being mixed with salt and being handed over, such continuity of tradition coming from so many generations. Now, this is Aragimpavaya in Nadanama Kriya. We find Tyagaraja has used the same word, Aragimpave, Pal Aragimpave, and he is offering food to Rama. He has come around 100 years after Shahaji. And we find that that song obviously was so popular at that time that he has structured the beginning of the song in such a similar way, and he now sets it in Todi. Let's hear Amrita Murali sing this song for us, a part of the song, before we move on. Raghuvira Janakajakara Pavitramuto Venna Pal Aragimbave. Sanctified, just as Purandaradasa gave Tambulam sanctified by the hand of Rukmini, here the milk and the butter is sanctified by the touch of Sita and then handed over to Rama. Then Saramaina Divyannamulu, great rice, Shad Rasayuta Bhakshanamulu, all accompanying dishes that will satisfy all the 6 tastes of the palate. And don't have it all by yourself. Dara Sodarulato, along with your wife and with your brothers, Dara Sodaradulato, with all others also have it, and that is how Tyagaraja is offering it. Now, Dikshitar does not have songs that describe food with this much of detailing, But we do have one or two compositions where suddenly he brings in a dish. So in his Divakara Tanujam Shaneshwaram, he says, Tilataila Mishritarna Deepa Priyam. So Shanishwara is pleased by offering Eldu Sadam. So he mentions that. Then in his Shankachakra Gadapani Mahamvande in Purna Chandrika, he talks about Amritasara Bhakshanam. This composition is dedicated to the Lord at Tirupati. And there, as you know, the laddu today is a very famous dish. In Dikshitar's time, it did not exist in the form that we know of it today, but as the temple records show, there was a sweetmeat that was offered that was known as Amritasara, and that is what Dikshitar mentions over there when he says Amritasara Bhakshanam. Interestingly, the topic of selling temple prasadam for money is something that is derisively referred to by Purandaradasa as well as his illustrious contemporary Kanakadasa. Kanakadasa, when he comes to visit Tirupati, he says, we have come to meet this Chetty called Govinda, who takes money for everything. He not only takes money, whatever we have, because he is forever paying some interest, but even for giving us dosa, he takes money from us. So it's a nindastuti. While praising the Lord, he is also, seemingly insulting the Lord. So they were so close that they could take liberties like that. The topic of prasadams in Tirupati alone, perhaps someday somebody will be able to do a complete presentation, I don't know. Now, after the era of the great composers, we come to the era of the great musicians. So we have Mahavaidyanath Sivan and Patnam Subramanya Iyer. I mentioned both of them to you in my last presentation. Bitter rivals and diametrically opposite in every way that they lived. As you can see, Mahavaidyanath Sivan, thin, emaciated. Patnam is all, well built over there, and he's filling the entire frame. Both of them striking the same pose almost. Now, this is the time from which we have documentation on the food habits of the great musicians. So, Mahavaidyanath Sivan, we know from the biography written by his disciple, was extremely abstemious when it came to food. Just molagarasam and never touching anything that was pungent, did not like pickles, would not have anything that was cold, did not have anything that was hot, because he felt that it would all impact his voice. Even a lime could not be presented to him because the smell from it could disturb his sinuses and cause problems to him. On the other hand, Patnam Subramanya Iyer was a bohemian. Every meal in the house had to be prepared as though there was a feast and there was a celebration. And from start to end, he would polish everything off. When his disciple Mysore Vasudevachar pointed out to him that Mahavaidyanath Sivan is living in such a careful way and taking care of his voice, I believe Patnam turned to him and said, it is the artist who should dictate to the voice should not be dictating anything to the artist. What is the point of leading a life if you have to live like that? So that was Patnam's great comment. Now, a man who carried a lot of Patnam Subramanya Iyer forward was Tiger Varadacharya, who was really not a disciple of Patnam, but who spent a number of years with Patnam Subramanya Iyer and imbibed his style greatly. There is a very beautiful story written about Tiger in a Zamindar's house in Kalahasti, where S.Y. Krishnaswamy, the ICS officer that Mr. Madhu mentioned in his introduction, was also present. And SYK writes that they had had a great feast, and then, there was a concert session with Tiger holding forth in one of his rare moods when, he couldn't be stopped. He kept singing and singing and singing. Finally, there came a bowl of thick buffalo curd made out of buffalo's milk. And it was meant to be shared with everybody, but Tiger finished everything in one shot, then patted his stomach and said, you desired it, you have got it, now you suffer for the rest of the night. And having addressed his stomach that way, he composed a pallavi on the spot. Mosa jesene, meegada palichi mosa jesene. Having desired thick curd, I have come to grief, I have come to grief. So this was the pallavi that Tiger composed and performed. The Tyagaraja Aradhana, at this point, immediately after Maha and Patnam and more in the era of Tiger Varadacharya, was really becoming a bigger festival. And as I have spoken in this very same forum several years ago, before the arrival of Bengaluru Nagaratnamma, the entire celebration was divided between two bitter rival teams, one known as the Periya Katchi and the other known as the Chinna Katchi. And both of them would descend on Thiruvayyaru at the same time and feed all the people of the village. people of the village found it very difficult because you couldn't eat 2 breakfasts, 2 lunches and 2 dinners, once at Periyakachi and once at Chinnakachi. Finally, Periyakachi and Chinnakachi came to an understanding and said, Periyakachi will start the Tyagaraja Aradhana 5 days before the actual Aradhana day. Chinnakachi will start on Aradhana day and continue for 4 days afterwards. The village of Thiruvayyaru was delighted because for 9 full days their meals were assured. And the meals were just not ordinary. They were something to be savoured and to be written in song and dance practically. So there is a reminiscence by Gotuvadyam Dorayappa Bhagavatar about the heydays of the Tyagaraja Aradhana when the two rival camps were fighting for popularity in Thiruvayyaru. And I translated it when I wrote my book on Bengaluru Nagaratnama. I'll read a small passage. The ding-dong battle for supremacy continued in the area of catering as well. Plantain leaves, bags of rice, vegetables and spices would arrive by the cartload and be stocked in the various guest houses of Thiruvayyaru. Kalyanapuram Vishwanatha Shastrigal was in charge of the board for the Chinnakachi, and a cook from the Madhva community, which was well known for its culinary skills, brought in by Palladam Sanjeeva Rao, would take care of the preparations. The food would be served at the Sitabai Chatram and hundreds would flock to partake of the breakfast, comprising hot steaming idlis, soaking in sambar. The Periyakachi had Vikravandi Mottai, a master chef in charge of its kitchen. The food was conventional, with enormous quantities of rice, pickles, curds and sambar made with eggplant, pumpkin or French beans. But the taste was extraordinary, with vegetables from the fertile Kaveri Delta and rice being plentiful. So this Vikravandi Mottai begins a tradition which you will come to in the final bits of this presentation. But right now, remember that he was the great cook as far as the Periyakachi was concerned. The entire Tanjavur Thiruvayyaru region, as is mentioned in this book, was known for its fertile produce of rice. And therefore, you had any number of these utsavams going on. All the time you will find Radha Kalyana Utsavam, Tirupunduruthi, some Swamigal Aradhane going on. Then you had Narayana Tirtha's Aradhane in 2 places, Tirupunduruthi and in Varahur. Then you had the Tyagaraja Aradhana, right? Then you had the great Bhajana Sampradaya of Sridhara Venkatesha Ayyaval, Sangeeta Swami, Sadguru Swamin and Bodhendral and all that. So all these places, the Bhagavatars would congregate, they would do bhajane, and then they would be fed. When they were being fed, the great challenge was to sing for the Payasam course. Payasathukku paadradungiradhe vandu oru periya tradition. All the Bhagavatas would sit in a row and the cook will be waiting with the Payasam. The Pundarikam will be uttered and then the first Bhagavatar will begin singing a Viritam. When he has finished his Viritam, the second Bhagavatar will sing, the Payasam will be served for the first one. And so on it will come. Everybody has to sing Viritams for the Payasam. Payasathukku paadradhu. The man who was an absolute expert in singing for the Payasam course, though he was not a trained musician, was the father of Maharajapuram Vishwanatha Ramayar. He was known as a Payasa Bhagavatar. He was well-to-do, he had lot of land, he didn't really need to earn a living, and he was known for his musical talents. Vishwanatha inherited that in great measure. And his Viritam singing was extraordinary. I'm going to play you a small clip of him singing Shrutva Gunan, the great Rukmini Sandesham, which he made famous on the concert platform. We have tantalizing glimpses of the food preferences of the great Carnatic stars of that era. Rajamanikam Pillai, who was not a gourmet, but he was a gourmand. Everything that could be offered to him, he had to have. And the great musicologist S.A.K. Durga told me that when he would visit their house, the leaf and the food would be spread privately so that nobody could see what Rajamanikam Pillai was eating, for fear that the evil eye would fall on him by seeing the quantity that he was eating. When he travelled by train, he made it a specialization to know what was good in every railway station that the train halted in. And he would get down, buy that item and come and distribute it among all his fellow musicians. Now, next to him, we have GNB, who, as we know, lived life king size. Contrary to that lifestyle, GNB was practically indifferent to food. It just didn't matter what was given to him, and he ate very sparingly. Maduramani Iyer was also a very sparing eater, but you should have heard the way he described the preparation of rasam. That to him was the finest dish possible, and just hearing that description makes you feel hungry at times. Mani Iyer, Palghat Mani Iyer, who was known to have been very Spartan in the second half of his life, he loved his food and he liked to have a full spread. But when he ate, he made such a mess of the leaf that nobody could bear to see it at the end. It was said that those were hands that were only meant to play the mridangam. They were very clumsy in most other activities of life. Bala Saraswati and her entire clan was known for their love for food, good food, and their very good taste. They were epicures as far as food was concerned. And Prema Srinivasan, in her wonderful cookbook, has given us a page on Bala Saraswati and how she described various dishes being made. It's one of my favorite passages, so I am going to read it out to you. I can't resist it. The greatest classical Indian danceuse of the 20th century, Bala Saraswati, indeed the master of all facets of Natya Shastra, once explained to me the correct way to prepare the betel leaf and the areca nut. She demonstrated with elegant movements how the betel leaf is first taken, cleaned with water, then wiped on a clean cloth, the ends of the leaf broken off, how the slaked lime mixed with coconut water is smeared on the back of the leaf, then a sharp slice with the hand to pull out the central nerve cutting the leaf into two, a deft shaping of the leaf into a cone, and the gentle placing of it into the mouth. Then and only then is the areca nut taken and warmed between the palms of the two hands and popped into the mouth. Though this was in conversation, the entire explanation was a delightful expression of the superiority of her dance. Bala Saraswati once told me that she was a greater cook than a dancer, a fact that is also mentioned in her biography by Douglas Knight. During the time Bala Saraswati visited me, I had a North Indian cook and so would make many North Indian snacks for tea. She teased me often, "When there are so many nice South Indian snacks, why are you always giving me chaat, kachori and rasagulla?" In this connection, she described with gesture and mimetic suggestion how to make the savory dish of pongal. Her gestures and the words brought the preparation and the enjoyment of the dish totally alive. So that was the great Bala Saraswati. There were songs for making dishes. So we have the famous Appala Paattu, which women used to sing when they would make the applam. It was left to Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi to give it a completely new interpretation. Just like Purandaradasa took the payasa and made it Ramanama Payasake Krishnanama Shakkare, Bhagavan, when his mother made the applams, composed a song in entirely philosophic burden, but seemingly a song on the making of the applam. I will first play a part of the song for you, and then I will read out the song in case you are not able to make out what is on screen.
அப்பளம் இட்டு பாரு அப்பளம் இட்டு பாரு அதை சாப்பிட்டுன் ஆசையை தீரு அப்பளம் இட்டு பாரு அதை சாப்பிட்டுன் ஆசையை தீரு அப்பளம் இட்டு பாரு அதை சாப்பிட்டுன் ஆசையை தீரு அப்பளம் ஈட்டு பாரு அதை சாப்பிட்டுன் ஆசையை தீரு இப்புவி தன்னில் ஏங்கி திரியாமல் சத்போத சுக சத்குருவானவர் செப்பாது சொன்ன தத்துவமாகிற ஒப்புயர்வில்லா ஓர் மொழியின்படி அப்பளம் இட்டு பாரு இப்புவி தன்னில் ஏங்கி திரியாமல் சத்போத சுக சத்குருவானவர் செப்பாது சொன்ன தத்துவமாகிற ஒப்புயர்வில்லா ஓர் மொழியின்படி அப்பளம் ஈட்டு பாரு அதை சாப்பிட்டும் செய்தீரு அப்பளம் ஈட்டு பாரு தானல்ல வைங்கோஷ க்ஷேத்திரம் இதில் வளர் தானல்ல வைங்கோஷ க்ஷேத்திரம் இதில் வளர் தானென்னுமானுமாம் தானிய உளுந்தை தானல்ல வைங்கோஷ க்ஷேத்திரம் இதில் வளர் தானென்னுமானுமாம் தானிய உளுந்தை நான் யார் என் ஞான விசாரத்திரிகையில் நான் யார் என் ஞான விசாரத்திரிகையில் நான் அல்லவென்றே நான் யார் என் ஞான விசாரத்திரிகையில் நான் அல்லவென்றே உடைத்து பொடித்து நான் யார் என் ஞான விசாரத்திரிகையில் நான் அல்லவென்றே உடைத்து பொடித்து அப்பளம் இட்டு பாரு அதை சாப்பிட்டும் ஆசையை தீரு.
Instead of wandering this earth, wearied by longing for peace, follow the incomparable word of the Sadguru pointing to the truth. Roll out the papads and eat them yourself. Here, encased in the 5 sheaths of organs, mind, intellect, and sleep of blissful ignorance, and different from them grows the kernel, the self, the abhimana felt as I. Pound it with the wisdom in the pestle of enquiry, who am I? And reduce it to powder as not I, not I. Now mix the juice of the edible cactus pirandai, this is satsanga, the company of the elevating which removes discord. Add jeera and black pepper which are shama and dama, equanimity and self-restraint. Toss in some salt of uparati which is non-attachment. Round it off with hing which is good vasanas, the tendencies which free us. With an inward-turned pestle of the mind, pound away the I, unrelenting at its stubborn, outgoing disobedience. Then, with the rolling pin of Shanti, roll out on the platter of evenness the appalams and eat them yourself. The text is almost the same as Ramanama Payasake, composed 300 and odd years earlier to this particular one. We now cross over to the celebrations of the December music season and the food connection to that. When did the canteen first come to the December Music Festival? I think it was in the year 1937-38 when the Music Academy shifted from the Georgetown area and came to the Royapeta part of Chennai. In 1938, the Music Academy conducted its festival in the compound of Old Woodlands Hotel in Royapeta, which you see over here in that photograph. This was the property of the Raja of Ramnad, and K. Krishna Rao had taken it on lease to run it as the Woodlands Hotel. When the Academy conducted its festival here, the catering was by Woodlands to all the people who came to attend the conference. Thereafter, it became customary for restaurants to advertise like this. Visit always for high-class lunch, Udupi Gopala Krishna Lunch Home, Tambuchetti Street, opposite the Music Academy premises. At that time, Music Academy was at Gana Mandir, Tambuchetti Street. In 1940, 39-40, the Music Academy moved to the University Senate House. This was on the beach, and it was very lonely during most parts of the day and completely deserted by the evening. Musicians and audiences complained about how they could come there. Special buses had to be organized between Mylapore, Mambalam and other places to the beach to get people to come to the December music season. The next big complaint was, where will we go to eat? There is nothing in this particular location. That is when K.V. Krishnaswamy Iyer, the president of the Music Academy, tied up with Ambi's Cafe. And the first advertisement you find, Music Academy and Ambi's Cafe at the Senate House during the music festival. Now, this was in the year 1940. Next year, once again, Music Academy at the Senate House, you find Music Academy and Bharat Cafe combined to offer you a sweet season. Good music from the Music Academy, quality lunch and meals from the Bharat Cafe. At this time, there were two other sabhas, the Indian Fine Arts Society and the Tamil Isai Sangam. But let's not forget that both of them were functioning from Armenian Street, which had any number of hotels and restaurants all around it. You had Mayor Ramakrishna Iyer's lunch home, V.R. Ramakrishna Iyer's lunch home, which is today known as Ramakrishna Lunch Home. You had a canteen in Gokhale Hall itself, which was run by the YMIA themselves. And so that was catering to the Indian Fine Arts Society. The Tamil Isai Sangam people went to all those places. It was only the academy that had this peculiar problem. And so they had to pioneer this concept of a canteen. Considering that it began in 1940, this is the 80th year of the concept of a canteen. And today, it is impossible to imagine that we can actually have a December music festival in any place without a canteen being provided along with it. There are people who will come along and say, "Yaar canteen caterer." They will never ask who is singing, what is happening, etc., etc. They are keener to know who is catering at which sabha. Now, the academy in the 1950s shifted to the PS Higher Secondary School grounds, and that is where it had its first formal caterer, and that was D.S. Appaswamy Iyer. Appaswamy Iyer apparently was known for the quality of his badam halwa, and people just flocked to have it. He also produced another, what sounds to be a fairly egregious production, and this was desiccated coconut mixed with crystal sugar. Apparently that was also very popular, though how anybody could have had such a combination beats me. But whatever Appaswamy Iyer did was evidently very successful. By the 1970s, Appaswamy Iyer had become a very popular caterer for society weddings in Madras, chiefly because he was running the canteen at the Music Academy during the December festival. All the society mamas and mamis who would come would then, meet him and then engage him for their family weddings, and he soon became very big for the academy. After Appaswamy Iyer, by the time the academy had shifted here, you had Kasi Halwa Krishnamurti. No prizes for guessing why. His signature dish was the Kasi Halwa. Krishnamurti was once cook to M.S. Subbalakshmi. He was one of the 6 cooks at Kalki Gardens. As you know, they had 20 gardeners and 6 cooks and all that, and some of them had specializations. My guess is that Krishnamurti was perhaps the dessert maker at Kalki Gardens. And so his speciality was the Kasi Halwa. And it is said that at around 4:30 or 5, the Kasi Halwa would be ready at the Music Academy. By 5:15, it would be exhausted. No, not a single drop would be available. And there have been occasions when people like Maharajapuram Vishwanath Iyer have actually stood in the queue and shouted at Krishnamurti for not having given him his Kasi Halwa. And it was also known that when the Kasi Halwa was ready in the canteen, there would be an exodus from the sabha towards the canteen. So there were some very careful and crafty musicians who would give the Taniyavartanam at exactly that moment, because the audiences could then leave and go and buy the Kasi Halwa and enjoy themselves. So this was Krishnamurti. Over a period of time, for various reasons, Krishnamurti was not very popular. He fell from grace, so to speak, and then the academy had to move on to other people. Certainly the magic of Krishnamurti never ever has been repeated in the Music Academy. We have had a lot of other caterers, but that was really the canteen's heyday. In the meantime, the Indian Fine Arts Society, the rival Sabha, had Hotel Everest as its caterer, and then K.R. Subbayya for a very long period of time. I have no idea who these two people were. I mean, I know who Hotel Everest was. It was run by Sundaram Iyer, who married a very famous dancer of that time called Hamsa Saraswati. And the two of them then migrated to Delhi, after which the restaurant and the hotel was run by his sons. It is still there. It's now known as Jaya Mansions in the road from Central Station to Egmore Station. As to who Subbayya is, I have no idea. But I know all about the man who catered to Narada Gana Sabha from 1988 till a few years ago. Sadly, and this is where I have been kicking myself ever since I began working on this presentation, I could not locate a single photograph of this great man. In my opinion, he was the canteen as far as I am concerned. Perhaps my eating years coincided with his cooking years. And so that could be the reason for this great warmth and affection. No prizes for guessing. I allude to Jnanambika Jayaraman. If you remember, I said during the time of the Tyagaraja Aradhana, there was a Vikravandi Mottai. Now, also from Vikravandi was Narayana Swami Iyer, and his sons were three. Arusuvai Natarajan, Jnanambika Jayaraman, and Meenambika Kannan. All three famous caterers. The old man was a very famous cook himself. But Jayaraman probably imbibed the essence of his father's culinary skills. And I must give you a word picture of Nardagana Sabha's canteen when it was at its height. Jayaraman was a great devotee of Swami Haridas Giri. So when you walked into the Narada Sabha canteen, you would find Haridas Giri's music being played all around the place. Then you couldn't turn anywhere without seeing photographs and statues of Jnanananda and his disciple Swami Haridas Giri. Jayaraman himself used to look like them because he used to wear ochre clothes all the time, and he would be seated exactly like Jnanananda with one foot crossed on the other. He only didn't do this. Everything else was there. He would never speak a word. He was just the man who would be watching everything that was happening, in a state of Satchidananda. And all his children would, all of them roly-poly. They had all been brought up on the diet of Jayaraman, obviously. All of them roly-poly, but full of energy, bundling across, coming down to you. They would, even though they didn't know you, say, Vango mama, vango, karango. Before you knew it, two people had pushed you into a chair and you couldn't get up from that. And then a menu would be shoved under your nose. And you'll say, எனக்கு ஒண்ணுமே வேண்டாம், தயிர் சாதம் சாப்பிடுங்க, ரொம்ப கேன்டீனில் சாப்பிட்டுட்டேன்னு நினைக்கிறேன். இது ஒரு பொடி ஒன்று பண்ணியிருக்கோம், பிரமாதமாக இருக்கும், இந்த பொடியை சாப்பிட்டுட்டா வயரில் இருக்கிற அத்தனை ப்ராப்ளமும் போயிடும். சரிப்பா, அதை கொண்டு வாங்க. ஸோ தயிர் சாதம் அண்ட் பொடி will arrive. இந்த குணுகு கொஞ்சம் ட்ரை பண்ணுறீங்களா? இப்போ தான் பண்ணியிருக்கா, ரொம்ப சுட ரொம்ப நல்லா இருக்குது. சரி, அதையும் கொண்டு வாங்க. தோசை ரொம்ப நல்லா இருக்கும். தோசை எங்கள் ஹோட்டல் இங்கே ஃபேமஸ். இங்கே தோசை சாப்பிடாமல் எப்படி மாமா நீங்கள் போகிறது? ஸோ தோசை will come, then பூரி will come, this will come, that will come. Finally you will have coffee, and at the end of it you will struggle to get up. They will not have any problems because there will be three people waiting in line watching you eating, and then they'll have to get in. The billing was done entirely on faith. You went to the entrance and you stood at the counter. Jayaraman would look at you and grunt. Then one son would bound up, and how they did it, I don't know. From memory, they would recite every dish you had, and very reasonable. It wasn't as though it was big amounts or something. But that was not the end of the story. You thought you had passed Jayaraman and his sons, but you didn't pass his daughter, who would be seated there with a whole lot of packaged savories. And that was the next thing that caught your eye. So after having eaten your fill, the glutton that you were, you went and bought murku and this and that from that lady, and then you went out laden. At the end of every season, it was assured that you would put on at least 4 to 5 kilos just by taking a look at Jayaraman and his children and his daughter, his sons and his daughter. Sadly, that entire dream world came to an end sometime with the floods of 2015. Many of their cooks, but they had to move away because of the floods. And after that, Jayaraman himself became very old. He passed away. Then there has been a split in the family. There are people who operate under his name, but that magic is not there anymore. In my opinion, they must have given him a title like Bhojana Kalanidhi or Bhojana Brahmam or something of that sort. He missed the whole thing. There was just one difference of opinion I had with Jayaraman, and the man actually read what I wrote and he was not too happy with it. See, he had this habit that he was the man who would carry the coffee to the stage where all the performers would be singing. and he would time his appearance to suit the climax of the song. Just as the artist was at the peak of the Kalpana Swarams, just before the Taniyavartanam, Jayaraman would appear in glorious orange, clattering tumblers and davaras and going all over the place like this, and he would distract you completely. And he once did this when my dear friend Unni Krishnan was performing, and I couldn't forgive him for it. So I wrote an article in Shruti magazine or something about why does Jayaraman have to make his appearance at this time. His sons very dutifully took a printout of it and presented it to the old man. So next time I went there, I was greeted with a grunt of displeasure, but he had never said anything beyond that at any time. Whether it was pleasure or displeasure, it was always a grunt. So this was a grunt of displeasure, but I, shameless that I was, continued feeding at Jayaraman's canteen till the time it finally went away. There was a very nasty joke that somebody once told me, and even though I'm a secretary of the academy, I must share it with you. They said that it was a blessing to eat at Narada Gana Sabha and then go to the toilet at the Music Academy because it was of the highest order and maintained in the best possible condition. I mentioned this to some other committee members and they did not take to it very kindly. But I will leave it at that. Jayaraman, I know, came to the canteen in 1988 because that is very well documented. And in 2001, Kannan, whom you see on this side, spoke of Natarajan. Natarajan was already a legend at that time. In 2001, Kannan said that Natarajan entered the canteen business 4 years ago, which means he must have started catering at the Music Academy in 1997. But Natarajan's tenure at the academy was brief. It wasn't more than 4 or 5 years, after which he went on to continue with his restaurant business. Kannan came late to the canteen. Initially, he was a wedding caterer, and it was only in 2001 that he took his foray. He came to the Mylapore Fine Arts Club and began to run the canteen there. And thereafter, he has been a continued presence in the December music season. One thing that was a problem with all these canteen operators was, what do you do with the surplus food at the end of the day if the demand was not heavy? As long as Maniyan of Idayam Pesigiradu was alive, none of them had that problem. Maniyan, that great journalist who was 3 times the size of every other journalist, would arrive at all the canteens in turn and pick up whatever was left over, buy it and go home and eat it and distribute it to everybody else also. He was a man who practically lived in the season canteen. There are stories about how he would come to the academy canteen and say, "Ennallam baki irke," and just say, bill everything, and then load it into his car and go home. Nobody has any idea what he did with the food, but he did this for several days on end. He was a great foodie himself. We've since had people with names like Mint Padmanabhan, who comes from the Konditop area, and we have Mount Money, who suddenly became Mountbatten Money. Now, he claims that he cooked for the Governor General in 1948, which I think is a figment of his own imagination. I don't think the dates really tally. And why would the Governor General have come to Madras to have fed from a cook who could not have been more than 12 or 13 at that point of time? Mount Money was a strong presence in the canteen for quite some time. Then he has grown old and he's moved on as well. The spacing of the canteen, the place where you keep the canteen, unfortunately today, the canteen has come to demand a significant amount of space from most of the sabhas, and it's a big problem because sabhas were not meant to have canteens in them. Or even the venues where the sabhas operate from, they were not meant to have canteens. There are actually sabhas in the city where the route to the toilet is via the canteen kitchen. You cross vegetables being cut and then you go to the toilet and you come back. Some of them operate from Kalyana Mandapams where, of course, the kitchen becomes the canteen, and that is where the food is also prepared and served. Some places like the Music Academy are singularly blessed. But the Academy never realized that it was singularly blessed for a very long time. It kept the canteen in the car park, and people kept saying that there is no space as far as we are concerned. We don't know where to move the canteen. They never knew that at the back of this is what comes when you're blessed with a lot of property. You don't bother with what's happening at the other end. They never realized that there was a transformer that was lording over the rear end of the auditorium with nothing to keep it company. Eventually, that entire area was cleared up, and that is how we have today a modern space in the academy where people can sit and eat in peace. And suddenly you find people from all parts of the world come to the Music Academy canteen. Not only do people come from all parts of the world, people come from all parts of Chennai as well. And there are certain people who have no idea what is going on inside the auditorium. All they know is that in December, there is a food festival that happens in places like Music Academy, Narada Gana Sabha, Krishna Gana Sabha and all that. And they have to go there and eat. These sabhas now have a rule that if you come to eat, you cannot park your car over there. Now that problem is also very simply solved. You go and you park your car, you have the lunch, then you go into the air-conditioned auditorium and sleep there for 45 minutes listening to the music that is going on. So you've listened to music also. And then you take your car and you leave. So this has been going on for quite some time now. No Sabha has been able to solve it. Does the Sabha really want to solve it? I have no idea about that because this also brings in the money. But what was very interesting 2 years ago was Pattappa, when he began to cater to the Music Academy, one day came and told us that a group of Marwadis in Sahukarpet had formed a WhatsApp group in which they had included Pattappa. And every day they were dictating the menu to him, telling him that we are coming with our family today. You prepare the following dishes. So the academy had actually been hijacked by a group of people living in Sahukarpet without our actually knowing about it. But that is really the success of the canteen. And somewhere along the line, maybe it brings new people into the world of music. We don't know. Maybe they come to eat. Maybe they then come and listen to some songs. Maybe they like what they've heard. Maybe they come next time for the music. This is how things have been going on for years. So perhaps the canteen is a very good thing. It is a very good thing as far as I am concerned. I would never complain about it. But before I finish, I'm going to let my dear friend Aruna Sairam have the last word about the Music Academy canteen.
இத்தனை நாடி நம்ம மியூசிக் அகாடமியை பற்றி நிறைய விஷயங்கள் பேசினோம். ஒரு முக்கியமான விஷயம் விட்டு போயிட்டு இப்போ பேச போகிறேன். என்ன மியூசிக் அகாடமி கேன்டீன்? என்னது அகாடமியை பற்றி பேசிட்டு கேன்டீனை பற்றி பேசுகிறீங்களே அப்படின்னு நீங்கள் நினைக்கலாம். பட் ட்ரஸ்ட் மீ, த அகாடமி proceedings and the canteen are two sides of the same coin. In fact, season patti announcement vanda odane everyone will ask, who is doing the canteen this year at the academy? It's very important because all the chatter, all the discussion, all the peripheral opinions are all formed in the canteen. If you walk into that canteen, you can get to know which concert was good, which artist got the most applause, which Tanyavartanam was earth-shattering, which violin solo really, made the mark, which lecture demonstration was most erudite. Ellame therinjidum. If a young musician walked into that canteen, they would immediately know where they stand in the mind of the experts as well as the public. You will know. It's like a barometer. அப்படி நடக்கும் அங்கே டிஸ்கஷன்ஸ் எல்லாம் ஓவர் மசாலா தோசா டிஃபன் எதுவாக இருந்தாலும். ஆஃப்கோர்ஸ் நவ டேஸ் யூ கேன் ஈவன் ஹியர் த கான்சர்ட்ஸ் பை ஸ்பீக்கர். ஐ திங்க் இப்போ வீடியோ கூட போட்டிருப்பான்னு நினைக்கிறேன் அட் த அகாடமிக் கேன்டீன். ஸோ கேன்டீன்ங்கிறது ரொம்ப முக்கியம். அண்ட் குட் மியூசிக் அண்ட் குட் ஃபுட் ஆர் இன்டெக்ரல் பார்ட்ஸ் ஆஃப் லைஃப், இஸ்ன்ட் இட்? தட் வே அகாடமி டசன்ட் ஹோல்ட் பேக் ஈவன் இன் தோஸ் ஆஸ்பெக்ட்ஸ். பிரமாதமா இருக்கும் எல்லாம். The year that I received the Sangeeta Kalanidhi, we were invited to have breakfast every morning at 7:30 before the day's proceedings started at the canteen with the executive committee members and the president. We enjoyed those breakfast sessions. We would talk about so many things, music and other topics. A very comfortable, warm atmosphere. In fact, after the 1st of January, Sairam and I started missing those breakfast sessions.
Thank you, Aruna. I think for a change, I will let you have the last word in this presentation. I wish all of you a fantastic 2021, and I hope to see all of you, if not in the auditorium, definitely in the season canteen. Have a great year ahead. See you all.